Hi, I'm Kevin Orman, the Master of Self-Leadership. Welcome to Leadership U. Today we'll talk more about how leadership and self-leadership skills will help you with conflict and conflict resolution, make those things easier to deal with. Welcome to Leadership U, where it really is all about you. One of the key issues relative to conflict resolution is to comprehend there basically are four different types of conflicts that we deal with. The first one, or four different situations. The first one is you're right and I'm wrong. Now that's one possibility. And of course, if that's the case, and we find out that that's the case, then I've got to do something about it, my end of it. The second possibility of a conflict is that I'm right and you're wrong. And in that case, ideally, we'd like you to deal with that situation, the person who is on the other side, and make whatever changes are necessary. A third possibility is that we're both wrong. We're not seeing the whole picture. We're not seeing it correctly. We're not understanding exactly what's going on with the conflict. And the fourth possibility, and this is one that's a little subtle, the fourth possibility is that we're both right. In that case, what's going on is that the context and the picture is bigger than either one is seeing. Now, I've had situations in my life where all of these have been the case. And sometimes I've been wrong, and I've had to deal with that, and I've had to make things right and fix them and change, and I've done a lot of that. And sometimes someone else was wrong. And sometimes they apologized, sometimes they fixed things, sometimes they didn't. And I can't control their behavior, so what they choose to do about that is their business. I can sometimes control consequences, or just allow natural consequences to take their course, whatever that may be. For example, someone is just telling me that I can't do this or I can't do that, and I know they're wrong because I know I can. And so in that case, I would probably, if possible, just stop associating with that individual. That would be a natural consequence of that. Don't hang around with people that want to steal your dream. That's just a bad idea. All it does is make you untrue to yourself. I have learned this from me. When I have done that, I feel bad inside. It's just not working for me, and it's because of the fact that I'm not being true to myself. I'm not being true to who and what I am, and who and what I can be, and who and what I can become, and what I can accomplish, and how I can help people, and so on. But one of the keys is to see this bigger picture, and everybody is different. For me, that's one of the biggest challenges, is to see that bigger picture. I have a tendency, you see, I'm ADHD, okay, and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, in case you can't tell. But anyway, as I've gotten older, the hyperactivity is a little bit less of an issue, but the attention deficit is still there. And when I was a kid growing up, that was, you were just a bad kid. I mean, that's just how people perceived it. You were just a bad kid. And so I would there was no such thing as a diagnosis. Nobody knew what ADHD was at that time. Obviously, there was no medication, all those other kinds of things that are available today. And sadly, sometimes abused and overused. But nonetheless, that was the case with me. And so that had a bearing on my attitude, my self-image, all these other kinds of things, because I thought I was a bad kid. And I thought that's just who I was and what I was, and there was nothing I could do about it. All of those things are false. I'm not a bad kid. I wasn't a bad kid then. I was a kid who was hyperactive, got a high IQ, and just easily bored, and flip-flop everywhere. Things like squirrel, that kind of thing. And it's just, that's kind of how it works. And the good news about that is there's a lot of creativity that comes from that. The bad news about that is in certain environments, such as a traditional classroom environment, doesn't work so well. That's not what they're looking for, and that's not what's rewarded. And so those of us that were kind of in that place, especially back when I was coming up, those kinds of things were just, you were just treated, as a problem. And so of course I bought into the concept and thought I was a problem. And the reality was, of course, that wasn't the issue at all. The issue was they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't want to deal with it. They copped out, whatever the case may be. So whatever the situation was in their case, that's the issue. Now, one of the issues with being ADHD is that the tendency is to really hyper-focus. And so when I get focused in on something, I have a tendency to really get the blinders on and not really be able to see things outside. And so that kind of precludes and creates a conflict issue for me, because I can't see the bigger picture quite as easily as I would like to, really. I really have to force myself to step back and look for that bigger picture and look for that bigger context. That place where we could both be right, and we just have to look at it from a bigger context. So that's really the lesson. The lesson is to step out of the emotion. The lesson is to step out of the blame and the guilt. The lesson is to step out of the finger pointing and name calling or whatever else, whether the names are called out loud or just in your head. They're still being called, and you know it and I know it. And so to step away from that and say, wait a minute, what am I not seeing here? What is there that I could possibly be not seeing here that would put this whole thing into a bigger and more congruent context? And so that's the self-leadership lesson today, is step back in a conflict situation, look for that place of a bigger picture, because in that bigger picture you might find that both people, you and whoever else is involved in the conflict, or if you're moderating a conflict, the two people that are involved in the conflict, they could both be wrong. One might be right, the other one might be right, and the other wrong, or they could both be right if the context were enlarged. And so that's the key, and that's the lesson for today. And that's the self-leadership skill, is, again, control the emotions. Emotional control, that comes from controlling the thinking. The attitude and the way we process and the way we think has to be controlled by you. Your attitude is yours. Own it and fix it. And then go from there to controlling the emotions so that you can think clearly. When emotions take over, what happens is the ability to think clearly goes away. What happens is the lower part of the brain, the amygdala and so on, takes over with the emotions, and the prefrontal cortex gets shut down, and you just can't think clearly, and you can't solve problems very well, and that's what we want to get past. So that's today's Leadership U, and we'll see you on the flip side. Subscribe here to Leadership U to make sure you get all the videos. Also, you can watch more videos from here, including 2 that I've shown, my speaker reel, and also one I call Leadership Elephants in You. Also from here, you can go ahead and then get to my website to find out more about my speaking, books, and other things. Have a great day. See you on the flip side.